goes on. Our next speaker is Dr. Ankur Sinha, an ex-senior resident from RP Center, who's a director of Max Vision Eye Center from Jaipur, a sterling personality with experience of over 13 years and very actively involved in academics with a firm grip on his private practice. And he is going to be talking on some very important thing for all of us, reading a single field printout on a Humphrey. So on to you, Dr. Ankur Sinha.
Thank you, Chitra ma'am. I'll be sharing my screen. At the outset, I'd like to thank Chitra ma'am and the AIOS ARC for giving me the opportunity to be here. I'll be talking about reading a single visual field of a Humphrey perimeter. So I'll straight away go. In this, we'll analyze the single field printout. For the benefit of understanding, we'll divide the field printout into various parts. So I'll be dividing that into 7 parts and we'll discuss the importance of each and every part. The first part is the procedure information in the patient data. The second part is the reliability indices. The third part is the raw numeric data and the grayscale. The fourth part is the total deviation, the numeric and the probability plot. The fifth part is the pattern deviation, having the numeric as well as the probability plot. And then the sixth part is the global indices that includes the GHT and the visual field index. And then we have the gaze tracker here in the end. So we move on to the first part, that is the procedure information in the patient data. So it is important to look for the name of the patient so that we have to be very, very sure that we are looking at the patient and the fields are the same person. Check for the ID of the patient, as there can be 2 patients with the same name in the clinic so that we are seeing the correct patient with the correct field. Check for the eye, which has been examined. Check for the date of birth because it compares with the normative age matched database from the perimeter. The date and the time of the exam, if you are looking for a serial field analysis, visual acuity, the refractive error, the pupil diameter, because small pupil can cause generalized depression and constriction of visual field. Check the test strategy, as it is set CETA standard, fast or faster. The stimulus size, because the comparison of the normative database is available only for stimulus size 3. And then the type of the program, like you're looking at a 10-2 or a 30-2, because they can look similar, but they are different programs with different visual field. Now, then there can be various types of strategy, like we just discussed about 30, 24, and 10-2. And then there are various programs like CETA standard, fast or faster, which are supposed to be less time consuming. Now, reliable indices. So at the top, we have the blind spot. So fixation monitor is the blind spot. The perimeter determines the blind spot early on in the field. And what it does is it gives a stimulus at the blind spot. And if the patient reports that it has seen it, it is taken as fixation loss. So typically there is a central light which is asked by the patient to be fixed upon. But if the patient is having a poor visual acuity, we can take a diamond also. So acceptable losses for fixation loss is, say, up to 20%. The false positive, the upper limit is around 15%. It is usually seen with the trigger-happy patients, and it is associated with high threshold values for the first few points because the patient is continuously pressing the trigger. It will have a high mean deviation, abnormally light grayscale. The testing will be very lengthy. GHT would show abnormal high sensitivity, and there would be larger defect in the pattern deviation as compared to seen in the total deviation. And these are what is called as white scotomas. Then we have these false negatives. The upper limit is up to 20 to 33%. It occurs when the attention is lost and the patient is fatigued or is not capable of pressing the button. The mean deviation will show a high negative index, and the pattern standard deviation will also be high. Then we move on to the foveal threshold. The foveal threshold is tested early on in the field. A good acuity with a poor threshold shows early involvement of fovea or the central points, and a poor acuity with a good threshold shows that the refractive error has not been properly placed in the perimeter. Then we move on to the raw data and the grayscale. It gives you an immediate and easily comprehensible picture. It has lighter and darker colors depending upon the threshold change. It is useful in highlighting the common artifacts, but one should be aware that it is not giving you a difference between the 2 points, and it can cause depression because of age and cataract. So it is not one of the very important things for interpretation of reading a single visual field in our case. Now we move on to the total deviation plot. It compares the patient's visual field with age-matched normative database, and a deviation from normative database by a factor of 5 decibels is taken as abnormal. So it designates as positive numbers and negative numbers, which are more sensitive and less sensitive points as compared to normative database. And then it is also a center-weighted kind of a parameter. it is good for overall visual field loss, but it is not good for determining the focal losses which we are looking for in case of glaucomas. But some glaucomas can have generalized depression, so it can give you a generalized depression of the visual field or generalized height of the visual field, hill of the vision of a patient. Now, pattern deviation, the field is corrected for the overall depression here from the total deviation plot. It identifies the glaucomatous focal defects which are there lying within the generalized defects. So in the early stages of glaucoma, the subtle defects are picked up in this map. And in the end stage, it can get reversed actually. The pattern deviation may show white, or there may not be any defect in the pattern deviation, but there will be a defect in the mean deviation, which will be required to follow up such patients. So the PD plot symbols which are absent in the total deviation plot are usually false positives. Then we move on to the glaucoma hemifield test, or the GHT. Now, if there is a p-value of less than 0.01 between the two zones, or a p-value of less than 0.005 between the two members of any pairs of zones, it is labeled as outside normal limits. Now, if there is a difference in the zones, but it is not hitting the sensitivity mark as we have just discussed, it is called as borderline. If the two zones are not much different, but the locations are showing depression, which is seen in 0.5% of normal subjects, it is labeled as generalized reduction of sensitivity. Or it could be abnormal high sensitive, as we just discussed in a trigger happy patient, or it could be within normal limits where there is no difference between the superior and the inferior hemifields. Then we move on to the global indices. They are again center weighted. A p-value of less than 5% has a high probability of being abnormal. A mean deviation tells you how much abnormal the field is from normal database and is represented as minus. A mean deviation of 2 decibels or more should arouse a suspicion. Small localized defects will give you a smaller mean deviation as compared to large advanced generalized defects. Pattern standard deviation will tell us how abnormal the hill of vision is. So a low positive, less disturbed hill of vision will show low PSDs as compared to more positives. Localized defects will give you a very high PSD as compared to a generalized defect, which will show a low PSD. Now, visual field index is a new metric that represents the entire visual field as a percentage of normal. So it is based upon the pattern deviation, and again, it is centrally weighted. A full field or a normal field will have a VFI of 100, and a perimetrically blind patient would have a visual VFI of 0. So there would be something in between 100 to 0, will be a single numeric which will be given as a VFI. Now, importance of VFI is it helps us in assessing the rate of progression and guiding the therapeutic intervention. So as we all know that there are two strategies, whether it is the event-based and the rate-based, and VFI kind of combines both of them. And there are a lot of studies which show that the VFI has a good correlation in early, moderate, and advanced glaucomas. Now we kind of interpret the global indices. If the patient is having cataract, high refractive error, media opacity, the mean deviation would be high with a normal PSD. Early glaucoma would have a low mean deviation with a high pattern standard deviation with a low p-value, and the plots would look almost similar in the mean deviation and the pattern standard deviation plots. In cataract and glaucoma or advanced glaucomas, the mean deviation and pattern standard deviation would be abnormal with a low p-value. In very advanced glaucomas, we have already discussed that the PSD would improve and the mean deviation would worsen. So mean deviation would be required to follow up in these cases. Now, gaze tracker. Now, gaze tracker follows the patient's cornea and records the movements of the eye. So higher and taller spike kind of note the greater deviation, and the downward spike represented the situation when this was unrecordable, the fixation was unrecordable. Now we move on to the minimum criteria, that is the for the glaucomatous defects. The GHT has to be outside normal limits. There should be a cluster of 3 non-edge points having a p-value of less than 5%, and one of which should be depressed by a p-value of less than 1% in at least 2 consecutive visual fields. And a CPSD should be less than 5% in the original criteria, but now that the CPSD has been replaced by PSD in the newer strategies. We also have this Hodab-Parrish classification where we can kind of categorize the glaucomatous defects as early, moderate, and severe depending upon the mean deviation. The number of points having a p-value of less than 5%, number of points having a p-value of less than 1%, and central 5 degrees. So I'll just give you some insight into how to do it. Now, this is a visual field of a patient. We see that the GHT is outside normal limits, and there is clearly more than 3 non-edge points having a p-value of less than 5%, and one of which having a p-value of less than 1%. And PSD is also less than Yeah, I'll be finishing in 1 minute. And PSD is definitely less than 5%. So 0.5%. So in this case, is this glaucomatous? So as per the criteria, Anderson-Patella criteria, yes, it is glaucomatous. But we look at it, it probably falls into mild to moderate defects. But once we look at the optic discs, we don't feel that this is corroborating with the optic discs we are looking at. So what we do is we repeat the visual fields, and the cause here was a drooping of eyelid. So we should always check the palpebral opening and the pupil size before ordering a visual field. Now this is another visual field. Again, we have GHT, which is outside normal limits, more than 3 Nornich points having a p-value of less than 5%, and one of which having a p-value of less than 1%. PSD again less than 0.5%. So is this glaucomatous? As per the Anderson-Patella criteria, yes, it is glaucomatous, and it will probably be moderate to severe. But we look at the disc, we find the discs do have a compromise, does have glaucoma. So we have a closer look here. We have a disc hemorrhage here, and the loss of nerve fiber layer, which can be seen as a nerve fiber layer defect. And this falls into severe category because of this 0, which is coming here in the close to fixation. So in the end, I would just like to say that it is important to rightly interpret the visual field, but it is more important to corroborate them clinically with the patient's findings. Thank you for patient hearing.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Ankur. That was a very good talk. And yes, as he clearly said, we need to correlate it clinically before we finally say that this particular person has early glaucoma or glaucoma suspect. A very basic question, Dr. Krishna Prasad, Krishna Das, I'm sorry. When would you like to change the target size or strategy, and when would you choose size 5 as target?
Usually in persons with very advanced glaucomas or compromised visual acuity, where they may not be able to perform as well with the standard size 3 object. So in patients usually with less than 660 vision, when you really want to evaluate or assess the visual fields for progression, practically in all advanced glaucomas, we would go in for a size 5.
Yeah. The sensitivity of less than 10 to 15 decibels. Dr. Gauri, can you take another question?
Yeah. Dr. Ronnie, can you tell us more about how the blind spot is detected in the visual field while it is testing, and what errors could be there while testing the visual field, which will lead on to a false false positives, and how does initialization of the blind spot matter, and what are your tips to the technician regarding this?
Sir, you are muted, sir.
The initiation of the blind spot testing is very important, because what happens is the machine actually will shoot a stimulus on your blind spot, and you're not supposed to see it there. So it maps out the blind spot, and therefore the next time when it shoots it there, if your eye is moved position more than a few degrees, it will be shooting onto seeing retina, and you will actually respond to it. So that's how the blind spot is tested. So for example, when you're testing doing the blind spot testing, and you move the forehead back during the test, that has altered the position of your eye, and you can get a completely deranged looking test, which you may not realize. And that's why blind spot testing is only part of the thing. You should also look at the gaze tracker that you get below the monitor. Always keep the tracking on. Your technicians like to keep it off, because then they can get away with this. Yeah. But you might have a fixation monitor which looks absolutely all right, but the gaze tracker is all over the place. So both of them are actually important in testing this. And that's why it's important for your technician to constantly check on the patient's head position in addition to looking at fixation. Because fixation, they keep telling them, but they don't look at a head turn or a head going back.
Dr. Satyan, I have a question for you. If there are scotomas close to fixation on a 30-2, would that be one of your indicators to do a 10-2 program?
Usually when you have even a very early glaucoma, you can do a 10-2 to pick up the defects. That's the new norms. So I personally don't do any 30-2 or 24-2 because I don't have the Humphreys. I use the T pattern in the narco. So I really don't do the. In fact, even if I have a Humphrey, I don't 30-2. So 24-2 prepared one. And the new program, I believe, is the C in the Humphreys. But in Octopus, it is so easy that the G pattern goes along the retinal affable. It is pretty easy to all the different. It's a kind of a center-weighted one. So it's quite easy to pick up the defects in the Octopus.
We're not able to hear you.
Hear it correctly. Correct. Can I ask one question, ma'am?
Yes. Yes, yes.
Yeah, Dr. Krishnadas, maybe you can take this, sir. What would you consider as a proper baseline field? Is a single field enough? Or do you go by the EGS recommendations and the other recommendations which say that you should get at least 3 fields in the first 2 years? You know, in the Indian context, this may or may not be possible. So do you want to put that in perspective? What constitutes a proper baseline when you are following up a patient with glaucoma?
Agreed. In most individuals, the first fields may not be very reliable enough. But several people, especially with the typical glaucomatous defects, even if the reliability parameters are not good, you may get a typical pattern of glaucomatous field damage just for you to correlate. But for you to assess progression prospectively, you need to have a good, reliable baseline visual field, which you usually get after the 3rd or 4th. It doesn't mean that you have to get all the 3 immediately. You can get the 3 or 4 successive fields in consecutive visits. And maybe the 3rd or 4th one, you can consider as baseline for progression. But practically speaking, we don't get at very short intervals, you know. So we just start doing it, and whatever is the most reliable, we consider it as the baseline for.
For example, if the first time the patient does a field and it's fairly reliable and it is correlating, would you, take that as and not do a repeat fields for?
Practically, yes, agree.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
One question which is maybe not theoretical of practical relevance. The person is getting into a good glaucoma practice, and he wants to buy a perimeter. Which one would you advise, Dr. Krishnadas? Your take-home message on?
I am most used to Humphreys, so I feel very comfortable with Humphreys because for the past 3 decades I've been used to it. So whenever my fellows or other doctors ask for a recommendation, I usually prefer Humphreys, but just listen from Satyan and Murli, okay, what they have to say regarding Octopus, and then you can take a decision.
Yes, Dr. Murli.
Good evening. Hi. I believe we're referring to Dr. Murli Ariga.
Yeah. Any Murli can take, but Murli Ariga, I know you are a strong advocate of, along with Satyan. You have been using it in the sense, strong advocate in the sense.
I have both.
You know the practical uses. Since you have both, probably you are the most eligible person to comment.
Would you like me to finish the talk and then take this?
Or sure. You can do it later also. Okay.
Yeah, sure. So then
I have one question to any of the panelists. When do you consider that fixation is threatened, and what would you consider as a split fixation? There's a little bit of a confusion about this among a lot of general ophthalmologists. So when would you consider that fixation is threatened, and what would you consider as a split fixation? Dr. Murli, you want to take that?
Yeah. This is Murlidhar or Murli?
Dr. Murli Ariga.
Humphrey and Octopus.
Anything, Humphrey or Octopus. I mean, I'm asking about threatened fixation and split fixation.
I'm not in the panel technically, so.
Yeah.
That's okay. You can answer.
Yeah. So basically, this the central fixation usually means a central 5 degrees or 3 degrees or whatever you want to test. If in the central 5 or 10 degrees, you find there are 4 points around the fixation. Suppose you find any one of the 4 points is significantly depressed to a P less than 1% or P less than 0.5%, it means that it's definitely affecting central fixation. That means that it's threatening fixation. That's how it technically it is. You look at the 4 points around the center of fixation.
Yes. I think that gives the answer. And what is the minimum age at which fields would be reliable, Dr. Satyan?
Above 18 is the ideal way to do, or 16. Different perimeters use the different age groups, but I think it is 16 plus is the way to go. I mean,
no, I think the question is different.
People can.
How young can you do perimetry? Since you have a database which compares 18 years of age as the normative database comparison.
Yes.
But we have people who do juveniles who do the fields
At
very well.
8 years, 7 years, they do it if they are sharp.
You do it at any age, but it will compare with an 18-year-old's fields. You will get an estimate of the field. So we can do it as early as the patient is mature enough to understand how to do perimetry.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, doctor, anybody wanted to comment on that?
Can I comment once? Yeah. Regarding the fixation, the other way to test is if you see the visual field as a fallen blind spot. If the blind spot is not in its position and it's fallen, probably that is what the patient is usually fixing, and now it's some other direction. So that gives it's a good clue that probably the fixation was not appropriate.
Yeah, the location of the blind spot on the field should be looked at. It should be between the 10 and the 20 degree on the side of the eye. Another thing I would like the panel, Dr. Satyan, you could tell us about this. Would you prefer to do the fields in a non-dilated stage or in a dilated stage? And how will it affect the interpretation of your vision?
Sorry to interrupt you. Your voice is breaking, sir.
Satyan, you have to look at your connectivity.
Maybe
we're not able to hear you.
Then switch off your video, then we can hear you better maybe. Sometimes it happens like that. Yeah, can you talk now? Yeah, we can hear.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
very clear. Yes, very clear.
Okay. I think the Gauri's question is quite specific regarding the pupil size. So when you have the pupil size of less than 3 millimeters, it is going to really affect the pupil by showing artificially constricted visual fields. So same way, if the pupil size is more than 6 mm, it is quite dilated pupil, then you really may not be able to get the proper fields done. So if the pupil is dilated beyond 6 millimeters, then probably one can look at having a +3 diopter lens added, and then you can still test it. So less than 3 mm and beyond 6 mm is not the ideal way to do the visual fields. That is one thing. And the second point is, whenever you have the visual fields done on the follow-up visits, just make sure that the pupil size is almost similar, so that you can assess the possible progression what is going on. Otherwise, sometimes the pupil is too small, and then you see on the follow-up visit, then you will think that as though the fields had progression. So you should not be getting carried away with that. Is that answers your question, Dr. Gauri?
Yes, sir. Thanks.
That is one just comment. That is one of the important causes in a neuro-ophthalmologic field. If you do a cycloplegic refraction, you'll get a spurious central or a paracentral scotoma. So you have to be careful about the dilatation. I mean, it should not be a fully dilated pupil when you're doing this.
I think there's a contrary view to this regarding dilated fields. I think Ronnie will agree with me on that. Actually, we'd work in different centers where you actually see the patient after a workup or a dilatation. So there's no harm in actually doing fields on a dilated pupil. And I think Shankar Nethralaya practice has been to do dilated fields after full dilatation, and there's no harm in follow-up fields also after dilatation. So, but only thing it should be noted that you're doing fields in a dilated pupil. Am I right, Ronnie?
Yeah. So, I mean, we do it both dilated or undilated. All that you need to remember is when it's dilated, in general, the threshold is depressed by about 0.5 decibels. So when you're checking for progression, try and do it in the same type of pupil. But otherwise, it doesn't make much of a difference. What's more important is your applanation and gonioscopy before the field, because they can cause definite depression of the field because of corneal.
Corneal is absolutely correct. That's true.
Yes.